Welcome back to Callahan's Corner. We have some questions, answer them live right here on Facebook. Got a user submitted question in the Service Autopilot's member group by Jimmy. I'm going to open it up in usual fashion to show you what Jimmy's got here. Jimmy, been working all evening trying to figure out how to send estimates with monthly pricing for services slash packages instead of per visit or total per package. Chatted with SA support and did a merge tag, but that would only allow the entire estimate to show a monthly price. I would like each package listed to show a monthly price to add an upsell service. I've been told that isn't available yet. Any workarounds that you know of? So, Jimmy, you've got a couple things going on here. I want to break this down for you real quick. So, first thing we're going to do is go into Service Autopilot. And as we're looking at it here, the first thing I want to touch on is you are correct. There is a thing here. And when I emailed you, I apologize, or Facebook messaged you back, I did misread your question. So I have a couple ideas to possibly make this work for you. First thing I want to do is hit on, though, is under the gear icon, estimate grids, we've got an area. So this allows us to figure out how we're actually going to display the pricing. So in your instance, Jimmy, you would probably want to go in and do your estimate description, remove service invoice. You may have quantity, rate, and amount. This will actually show the season total, or potentially we could get in here and actually change the quantity potentially as well. So there's a couple different ways we may be able to do this, but I don't think I actually have an exact answer solution for you. I'm going to get rid of these guys here for sure. But this is one option here, and we're just going to call this Jimmy Facebook Live Grid and hit save. So that's the first thing is we wanted to find our grid, how we actually want to display it. Second part is we want to go into gear icon documents. And this is going to be the first approach here when we go in. So we'd add our document. Document type would be a estimate, and we'd want to select that into a estimate document with an email. So the email that actually sends out. And it is test account. I'm not exactly sure what I got working here, but we're going to go with this one. And we're going to set it to our acceptance email, which I'm hoping we have one in this test account as well. We're going to use the Misfits acceptance. And we're going to hit save. That's going to open up, call this SA Live question installs. All right, so once we have that, we are going to go in and grab a document here. I'm just going to grab a blank one. The drag and drop builder here. I'm going to make this very, very simple here, but the idea is we're going to build out the document here. In perspective, I probably should have just grabbed one we already had, but I'm going to just, in its most basic form, grab a couple things in here. So this would be your paragraph area where you'd have the information about selecting the estimate. This is where we pull in our dynamic content. This is where it would display the actual information. So we're going to pull Jimmy's in here, and then this final content area is, once we build it out, is where I want to go in and so we've got our number of installments and installment amount. So this is one way that Jimmy, if you wanted to show it all, everything on there, to be able to do this, but your payment plan is divided into X amount of installments of X amount of dollars on a monthly basis. This is how we could potentially do it. I don't believe this is exactly what Jimmy's asking for, but I want to kind of hit on this as the first area here. But we've got this in, and we've got the pricing. So we'd have probably something in there. Step one, select the service you want. Step two, sign. We would probably on the bottom here have our signature merge tag as well. So once we have that, we're going to go in, hit save and close. This builds out our document, obviously extremely rough. But now that we've got that, we can go in and create an estimate for our tester, add an estimate. And we're going to grab our template. And I'm going to tie that into our actual document here for Jimmy versus the other one. Probably should have selected this all before going live, but what we'll do is we'll go back to this document here and connect the job estimate template to Jimmy's document so we can see what that looks like. So we're going to go in and create a template. Both, and we're going to select Jimmy's document here. Where did Jimmy's estimate go? Let's double check here real quick what we named that. But the idea is you need to connect the job estimate template to the estimate document, which has the email in the front, email in the back, and the estimate document in there. So I'm just going to go and pull Jimmy's document here, and we'll pull this all together. So if you've never built this before, the unanticipated action steps here is going to show you how to connect it all together. All right. Today is 12/19. So let's see what we got. 12/19. There we go. It's not called Jimmy. That is the reason why we couldn't find it. All right, so we're going to drop the template in here. All right, Jimmy's good to go. And we're going to go in and do some shrub pruning. And we're going to add in a couple of variables of small, medium, and large shrubs. All right. So you get the idea. We may have multiple services now that Jimmy's looking at here, but the idea is we've got the template, save and close, and now we're going to go to our test client and drive in some data. Ideally, we'd be going into A for AutoSys and filling out an on-site estimate form for the number of small, medium, and large shrubs, but for time's sake, I'm going to manually pump those in there. And Jimmy Facebook Live is our template. So everything should be in there, and we're going to pump in 20 small shrubs, less than 3 feet, 3 to less than 6. I've got 15, and let's say we've got 21 large shrubs. So we've got $776.25. That's the first area that we've got. We're going to go draft quote. This is one way of tackling it here. So we've got this area, and we're going to go down and hit save. I believe this is the opposite of Jimmy's question, but I could be wrong. So I'm going to show you both. But this is going to break that down into 12 monthly installments based on that, or the settings in the gear icon estimate settings. So let me pull this up here because I'm working with a larger monitor. We're going to go in and grab this. So what we have here is in the non-Jimmy example, we would probably have no quantity, rate, or amount up here based on the grid, but we would have the area here. So that is one way of tackling it. So if we were using this example for Jimmy, we would go in and let's see here, go back into the lead. And if I hit edit, this would actually be a way just to kind of, you're testing this here. But if I switched out the grid and use the yearly contract grid, close, I believe this one here is, I'll actually see the way we'd want it. So right now we'd want a grid with no quantity, rate, and amount. We're just showing the bottom piece here. So let's take a look if I grab the right one. Let's preview this. Then I'll show you an option here that potentially may be Jimmy's solution as well. So if we had done it, basically you would have the details up here, but it would be divided into 12 of 64. So this is probably the area we'd want with the grid. We'd have to go in and save and re-add that grid for the service line. That's the end result that we want on the bottom. So in this example here, if we went in, I would go in and add an estimate and have a different document that didn't have the installment areas on the bottom. But I'm going to use Jimmy's example here as well. Just type in a couple different types of shrubs here, size-wise, to get some pricing. What we could do here is potentially change the visits here. So if we were doing, if this was going in, so we had a quantity of, we could play with the quantity in the visit. So if this was a lawn mowing example or some other, well, I guess this actually would work. So like if we had a quantity of 2 times, you could play with it. So if it's 12 visits, 12 installments of that, you could potentially play with the math here with the quantity. So if we wanted to do some math on this, potentially you could have visits show, you can manipulate the quantity. What it's going to show is the total amount on the bottom. So there could be some math you could play, Jimmy, on this part. I'd have to do some thoughts exactly how you'd want to manipulate the math. But right now, your total amount for the year for this shrub trimming based on 12 visits, so once a month, would be 7,300. So you could potentially go in and let's just see on my calculator here if the math works out. So if I made this 0.0833, basically how you said in your example, that right there would actually 0.0833 to visually show it. That would actually be your monthly installment for 12 months. So that's one way, Jimmy, that you may be able to manipulate the documents. The only concern here is when you do that, it may be manipulating your budgeted cost and some of the operating things. So I'd need to walk back and actually do the math. But I think that's the only way to manipulate the system in there. So that's 636 here times 12 equals 7632. If we drop this into quantity one, math is close, but it's not identical. So I would say on that, Jimmy, they probably don't have a great solution, but that would be the only place that I think you may be able to play with it is really the quantity or the visits to the math. But I would say up to that point, you're going to have a set amount on the bottom for an installment plan. It's the only option with the merge tag. So hopefully it's helped. Not probably the answer you wanted, but I did want to at least flesh out how to do it for the merge tag and give you some ideas where you could play with it if you can make the math work. So Callahan's Corner, you asked questions, we answer them live right here on Facebook.